Your soulmate just found out why you became so distant and now they regret everything. My beloved child, don't skip, stay till the end, because something huge is waiting. Your soulmate has just discovered something they were never supposed to understand this late. For the longest time, they believed your distance meant you stopped caring. They thought your silence was coldness, your absence was a choice, and the way you slowly pulled back meant your feelings had disappeared. But now, one truth has changed the entire story in their mind. They finally understand that you did not become distant because you felt nothing. You became distant because you had felt too much for too long without receiving the clarity your heart needed. And don't skip, because what they realized next is the part they cannot stop thinking about. They are remembering the moments when you tried to stay connected, the times you gave understanding without demanding anything in return, and the little chances they had to make you feel valued. Suddenly, your distance makes sense to them. It was not one dramatic moment that changed you. It was the accumulation of small disappointments you quietly carried until something inside you finally said, enough. Now they are looking backward and seeing everything differently. Here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Your soulmate may have assumed that you would always remain emotionally available, that no matter how confusing things became, some part of you would keep waiting. But the version of you they see now feels different. Quieter. Stronger. Harder to reach. And that difference has forced them to confront a realization they kept avoiding. They may have taken your presence for granted while it was still easy to have. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to recognize that some of your quietest moments were actually saying the loudest things. When you stopped explaining yourself, it wasn't because you suddenly had nothing to say. When you stopped chasing clarity, it wasn't because you no longer wanted it. You had simply reached the point where protecting your peace became more important than repeatedly proving your intentions. That realization is hitting them differently now because they can finally see what they could not see before. You were not asking for perfection. You were looking for consistency, sincerity, and a reason to believe that the connection mattered equally on both sides. But there is one realization deeper than all the others, and this is where their regret truly begins. Don't skip. They have started wondering whether they recognized your value only after your energy changed. They are replaying conversations and noticing details that once seemed ordinary. Your patience. Your warmth. The way you remembered things. The way you kept giving another chance to moments that could have pushed you away much sooner. And now comes the question they cannot easily silence. What if your distance was never meant to punish them, but was simply the final result of you learning that you could not keep abandoning yourself to preserve a connection? That question changes everything. Because now they understand that getting close to you again would require more than words. Something would have to be different. Something would have to become real. And stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The biggest revelation has not happened yet. Your soulmate is about to understand exactly what your silence was trying to tell them all along, and once that truth becomes impossible to ignore, they may never look at you, or themselves, the same way again. Something has shifted inside your soulmate, and this time they cannot pretend they don't feel it. Don't skip, because the truth they are beginning to understand is much bigger than simply missing you. They are realizing that your distance was not created overnight. It was built slowly, through moments when you needed reassurance but received uncertainty, moments when you wanted honesty but were left wondering, and moments when you stayed emotionally present even when doing so became difficult. Now those memories are returning with a completely different meaning. They remember how you once gave them access to the softest parts of you without making them earn every moment. They remember how naturally you cared, how deeply you listened, and how often you tried to understand what they could not explain. Back then, those things may have seemed normal. Now they understand how rare they actually were. And something huge is waiting for you, because the most surprising part is this. Your soulmate isn't only thinking about what they lost. They are beginning to understand exactly how their own choices helped create the version of you that eventually stepped back. What they never expected was that your silence would become louder than every conversation you once had. Stay till the end, because this realization changes the entire connection. Your soulmate may have expected you to return to the old pattern. To reach out, explain yourself again, reopen the door, or somehow make everything comfortable. But when you didn't, they were forced to sit with questions they had previously avoided. Why did someone who cared so deeply suddenly stop trying so hard? Why did someone who once wanted answers become comfortable with silence? And then the answer appeared: you didn't stop caring first, you stopped carrying everything alone. Don't skip, because this is where regret becomes real. They finally see that every time you quietly accepted less than you deserved, you were moving one step closer to choosing yourself. They mistook your patience for permanence. They believed there would always be another opportunity to say what should have been said, another moment to show what should have been shown, another chance to repair what was becoming fragile. But now they are discovering that some people do not leave because their feelings disappear. Sometimes they leave because their self-respect finally becomes stronger than their hope. And now comes the revelation your soulmate was least prepared for. Something huge is waiting for you. They are realizing that the person they miss today is not exactly the person they once knew. Your distance changed you. It taught you how to stop searching for answers in someone else's behavior. It taught you that genuine connection should not constantly leave you questioning where you stand. And while they are looking backward, wishing they had understood sooner, you have been becoming someone who no longer needs to chase what is meant to meet them halfway. Stay till the end, because this is only the beginning of what they are discovering. The regret isn't simply, "I should have treated them differently." It is becoming something far more powerful: "I had something rare in front of me, and I didn't recognize its full value until I could no longer reach it the same way." Don't skip. Because there is still one memory they keep returning to, one moment that suddenly explains why you became distant, and when that memory finally connects with everything else, the truth about what they truly feel for you becomes impossible for them to hide. But now, one memory keeps returning to your soulmate with a force they never expected, and it may be the exact moment everything finally becomes clear. Don't skip, because this is where they begin connecting the pieces they ignored before. They remember a time when your energy changed, not dramatically, not with some huge announcement, but quietly. Maybe your replies became shorter. Maybe you stopped asking the questions you once asked. Maybe you stopped explaining why something hurt you. At the time, they could have mistaken that calmness for acceptance, but now they understand something completely different. That was the moment you were becoming tired of repeating what your heart had already made clear. And stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that before you became distant, you probably gave more chances than they even noticed. You waited for consistency. You hoped actions would finally match words. You kept believing the connection could become what you knew it had the potential to be. But slowly, you learned something powerful: you cannot build closeness alone. And when that truth settled inside you, your energy naturally began moving away from everything that kept leaving you uncertain. What is surprising them now is how much they can suddenly remember. Don't skip. Tiny details are coming back: the warmth you once showed without hesitation, the way you made space for them, the moments when you could have walked away but chose understanding instead. Those memories feel different now because your absence has given them something your presence couldn't. Perspective. When you were always there, they didn't fully understand what life would feel like when your attention was no longer guaranteed. Now they know. And this is where their regret becomes deeper. They are realizing that you weren't demanding something impossible. You simply wanted to feel that what existed between you mattered enough to be protected. They may even be asking themselves why they waited until your energy changed before recognizing how much you were giving. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because their biggest realization isn't that you became distant. It's that they finally understand why. You were not trying to make them chase you. You were not trying to create confusion. You were learning to stop pouring your heart into a place where you constantly had to wonder whether it was safe to keep giving. And here is where everything takes another unexpected turn. Your soulmate may now understand that simply missing you isn't enough to restore what changed. Don't skip, because this truth is forcing them to look at themselves differently. If they ever want the closeness you once shared, they know it cannot be rebuilt with temporary attention or beautiful promises. It would require consistency. It would require showing you, through actions, that they finally understand what they once overlooked. And something huge is waiting for you, because while they are reaching this realization, you are no longer standing emotionally where they left you. You have learned from the silence. You have grown inside the distance. You have started recognizing that your value never depended on whether someone else noticed it quickly enough. That is what they did not expect. They thought distance might make you miss the old connection, but instead, distance may have reminded you of yourself. Stay till the end, because the next realization is the one that could completely change how your soulmate sees this entire story. They are beginning to understand that losing your attention was painful, but losing the version of you who once believed endlessly in them may be the regret they carry much longer. And suddenly, your soulmate is facing a truth they never imagined would become this powerful: the version of you they once had easy access to may no longer exist. Don't skip, because this is not simply about you becoming quieter or creating distance. Something deeper changed. There was once a version of you who searched for reasons to stay, who gave the benefit of the doubt, who believed another conversation might finally bring clarity. But eventually, you stopped trying to convince yourself that uncertainty was enough. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate can feel that difference now. They may remember how naturally you once opened your heart, and suddenly they understand that your openness was never weakness, it was trust. And trust is something completely different once it has been tested too many times. That realization is making them replay moments they once overlooked. They remember the questions you stopped asking. They remember the conversations you stopped initiating. They remember how your energy gradually became calmer. What looked like silence from the outside was actually a decision forming inside you. You would no longer lose yourself trying to hold on to something that required two people to protect. Then comes the realization that hits even deeper. Don't skip. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that they were never competing with another person for your attention, they were competing with the peace you discovered when you stopped chasing certainty from them. And that changes everything. Once someone discovers peace after emotional confusion, words alone rarely convince them to return to the same pattern. Your soulmate knows this now. They understand that if they ever stand before your heart again, they cannot arrive with the same energy that made you step away. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They would have to show up differently, not for one day, not for one emotional moment, but consistently. Because you have already experienced what happens when expectations are built on possibilities instead of actions. And perhaps that is what they regret most. They had opportunities to make you feel secure while your heart was still reaching toward them, but they believed there would always be more time. Now they are discovering that time doesn't always remove feelings, sometimes it removes access. And the moment they truly understand that, every memory of your patience suddenly becomes more valuable. But the biggest shift hasn't happened in them, it has happened in you. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because while your soulmate is finally understanding why you became distant, you are beginning to understand why you needed that distance in the first place. You needed to remember that genuine love should not require you to constantly question your worth. You needed to discover that being deeply caring does not mean endlessly waiting. And now your soulmate can sense something they never expected. You are no longer waiting for someone else to decide your value. Don't skip, because this is exactly where their regret becomes impossible to ignore. They are looking at the person you have become and realizing that your distance wasn't the end of your story, it was the beginning of your transformation. And there is still one final truth they haven't fully confronted yet, a truth hidden underneath every memory, every unanswered question, and every moment they wish they could revisit. Once they finally admit it to themselves, they will understand why losing your old energy affected them so deeply, and why what happens next could completely redefine this connection. Now the truth they have been avoiding is finally becoming impossible to escape. Don't skip, because this is the realization that changes the meaning of everything that happened between you. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that they didn't simply miss your messages, your attention, or your presence. They missed the way you made them feel understood without forcing them to explain every hidden emotion. That kind of connection is not something people easily replace, and only now are they recognizing how unusual it was. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are replaying the moments when you could sense something was different before they even said a word. They remember how you noticed the smallest changes, how you cared about details others might overlook, and how naturally you made space for their emotions. At the time, they may not have understood how meaningful that was because they were experiencing it every day. But your distance removed what had become familiar, and suddenly the familiar became unforgettable. Now one question keeps returning to them: why did it take losing that closeness to finally understand its value? And the answer is uncomfortable. They assumed your heart would remain exactly where they left it. They thought your patience had no ending. But while they were taking their time, something inside you was quietly learning how to let go of expectations. Then something even more surprising begins happening. Your soulmate starts comparing the silence they have now with the connection they had before, and the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Don't skip. This is where regret turns into recognition. They realize that your distance did not happen because you suddenly became a different person. You became different because the experience taught you to protect the parts of yourself you once gave too freely. And now they understand why getting your attention back would never be enough. They would need to regain your trust, and trust cannot be demanded, rushed, or restored through a few perfect sentences. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate may be imagining what they would say if they had one completely honest conversation with you. They may want to explain what they failed to understand before. But every possible sentence leads them back to the same realization: if they had understood your silence earlier, perhaps you would never have needed to become so distant. That thought stays with them because now they can see the difference between someone who temporarily steps away and someone who has finally discovered they deserve emotional peace. You didn't disappear to create a reaction. You simply stopped fighting for a place that should never have required so much fighting. And this is where the story becomes bigger than regret. Something huge is waiting for you, so don't skip. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that the greatest thing they lost wasn't your constant attention, it was the certainty that you would always be there in the same way. That certainty is gone, and suddenly every choice matters differently. They know that if your paths move closer again, the connection cannot return to what it was. It would have to become something more honest, more balanced, and more intentional. But here is the revelation they never expected: you may no longer need the answer you once desperately wanted from them. Your distance gave you clarity. Your silence taught you what chasing explanations never could. You discovered that sometimes closure isn't another person's perfect explanation, sometimes closure is finally seeing the pattern clearly enough to choose differently. Stay till the end, because the deepest revelation is still ahead. Your soulmate is approaching the one question they have been afraid to ask themselves: if they finally understand your worth now, is it because they are ready to value you differently, or because they never believed you would actually become strong enough to walk forward without them? And when they answer that question truthfully, everything changes. And now your soulmate has reached the question they can no longer avoid. Don't skip, because what they are realizing here could completely change the way they understand your entire connection. They are asking themselves whether they truly recognized your value while you were close, or whether they only understood it when your energy was no longer available in the same way. That question is forcing them to revisit everything. The conversations they delayed. The reassurance they assumed could wait. The moments when your heart was reaching toward them while they believed there would always be another opportunity. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are finally seeing that your distance wasn't created by one single disappointment. It was created by all the little moments that quietly told you to expect less. And the shocking part is that they may now remember the exact moment your energy began changing. You became less interested in explanations and more interested in actions. You stopped asking for clarity because you started observing consistency. You stopped trying to make them understand because you realized that genuine care shouldn't require endless translation. Now your soulmate understands why your silence felt different. You weren't waiting for them to notice anymore. You were discovering what happened when you finally chose your own peace. But something even deeper is unfolding inside them. Don't skip, because this is the realization they never expected to face. They are beginning to understand that your distance didn't erase the connection, it exposed what the connection actually meant to them. When your presence was constant, they could postpone their feelings. When your attention was available, they could assume tomorrow would offer another chance. But once that certainty disappeared, everything they had avoided became louder. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Memories that once seemed ordinary suddenly carry weight. A conversation. A look. A moment when you stayed patient even though you were disappointed. They are remembering the version of you who kept choosing understanding, and now they realize how much strength that required. The regret comes from knowing that you never needed perfection from them. You needed something much simpler and much rarer. Honesty that remained honest, effort that didn't disappear, and actions that made you feel secure without forcing you to ask repeatedly. And now they understand that if they ever approach you again, they cannot expect the old version of you to immediately reopen every door. They would be meeting someone who has learned the difference between promises that sound beautiful and consistency that actually feels beautiful. And here comes the shift they were completely unprepared for. Something huge is waiting for you, so don't skip. Your soulmate is realizing that while they were finally understanding your absence, you were learning how powerful your own presence could become. You stopped measuring your worth through someone else's attention. You stopped believing that unanswered questions meant something was wrong with you. And slowly, the energy that once went into waiting started returning to you. That is why everything feels different now. Stay till the end, because the next truth is bigger than regret. Your soulmate may finally be ready to admit something they could never admit while you were close. They always knew there was something rare about your connection, but they didn't understand how rare until they felt the possibility of moving forward without it. And now one final realization is beginning to rise above all the others. They know that missing you is easy. Thinking about you is easy. Remembering you is easy. But becoming someone capable of meeting you with the same depth you once offered, that is the real test. And what they decide when they finally face that truth may reveal whether this connection was simply a powerful chapter, or whether everything that happened was preparing both of you for a completely different beginning. But something unexpected is happening now, because your soulmate is no longer asking only, "Why did you become distant?" They are beginning to ask, "What did I fail to understand while you were still close?" Don't skip, because this question is opening a door they kept closed for far too long. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are finally seeing that your distance was never the mystery. The real mystery was why they couldn't recognize your emotional exhaustion sooner. You gave signals without creating chaos. You became quieter instead of demanding more. You slowly stopped expecting the things you once hoped would happen naturally. And now, looking backward, they can see the exact pattern. Every time they assumed you would simply understand, you carried another unanswered feeling. Every time they believed there would be another chance, your heart learned to expect a little less. And then came the moment they never noticed: you stopped waiting for change. That is what shakes them now. Because losing someone after a dramatic goodbye is one thing, but realizing someone emotionally stepped away while you still believed everything was fine feels completely different. Your soulmate now understands that your silence wasn't empty. It contained every conversation you became too tired to repeat. And here is the revelation they never saw coming. Don't skip. Your soulmate is realizing that the hardest part isn't seeing you distant. It is seeing you become comfortable without the reassurance you once wanted from them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. There was a time when one message from them could change your entire mood. There was a time when their attention mattered more than you wanted to admit. But something shifted when you discovered that peace could exist without constantly wondering what another person was thinking. And they can feel that shift. They know the old pattern no longer has the same power over you. That is where regret becomes something deeper than missing the past. They are beginning to understand that they had access to a version of you who was willing to build, forgive, understand, and believe, and instead of protecting that connection, they assumed it would remain available. Now they are looking at someone who has learned boundaries, someone who understands that love and self-respect are supposed to exist together. And suddenly they know, if they ever want another opportunity with you, they cannot simply remind you of the past. They would have to give you a reason to believe the future would be different. Now pay attention, because this is where everything starts moving toward the biggest truth of all. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate may finally understand that regret alone changes nothing. Missing you changes nothing. Replaying memories changes nothing. The only thing capable of changing this story is genuine growth followed by consistent action. And that realization places them at a crossroads. They can remain trapped inside thoughts of what they should have done, or they can become honest about what they would do differently now. Meanwhile, something powerful has already happened within you. You stop needing their realization in order to recognize your own value. Stay till the end, because that is exactly why the balance has changed. Before, you may have wondered whether they would ever understand your heart. Now they are wondering whether they will ever have the opportunity to experience that heart in the same way again. And beneath all their regret is one final thought they cannot silence. What if the distance they once misunderstood was actually your heart giving them one last opportunity to notice what was disappearing? Because there is one more truth waiting beneath everything. And once it comes to the surface, your soulmate may finally understand what they should have realized before you ever became distant. Now the final truth is beginning to surface, and it is the one your soulmate was least prepared to face. Don't skip, because everything they have realized until now leads directly to this moment. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate finally understands that you never wanted them to chase you after you became distant. You wanted them to value you before distance became necessary. That difference changes everything. You were never asking for impossible promises or perfect behavior. You wanted to feel that your presence mattered while you were still giving it freely. You wanted effort without having to disappear first. You wanted honesty before silence became easier than another unanswered question. And now they can see it clearly. The person they thought would always keep reaching eventually learned how to stop. The heart they assumed would always remain open eventually learned that protecting its peace was not selfish. And perhaps the most surprising realization of all is that your soulmate can finally see how many opportunities they had before you changed. Moments that seemed small then suddenly feel enormous now. A conversation they could have handled differently. A moment when they could have reassured you. A time when they could have shown you through actions that you were not carrying the connection alone. They cannot return to those exact moments, and that is why those memories suddenly carry so much weight. But don't skip, because there is another layer they are only beginning to understand. Your distance didn't just teach them something about you, it forced them to discover something about themselves. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are realizing how easily people can become comfortable with something precious when they believe it will always be available. Your patience became familiar. Your understanding became expected. Your presence became something they thought tomorrow would automatically bring again. Then everything shifted, and suddenly tomorrow looked different. That is when they understood the value of what yesterday contained. Now they may be replaying your final moments of emotional openness and wondering whether you were giving them chances they didn't even recognize as chances. They may finally understand that every time you explained how you felt, you were not creating a problem, you were trying to prevent distance. Every time you asked for clarity, you were trying to protect the connection. Every time you remained patient, you were quietly hoping that something would finally change. And when you stopped doing those things, they may have thought you had become cold. But now they know the opposite was true. You had cared so deeply that eventually you had to stop exhausting yourself trying to keep everything alive. And this is where the entire story turns. Don't skip. Your soulmate's biggest regret may not be that you walked away emotionally, it may be that they finally became capable of understanding you after you stopped needing to be understood by them. Something huge is waiting for you, because that realization changes the power of the connection completely. You are no longer standing in the same place, waiting for an answer to determine what you deserve. You know what consistency feels like because you learned what inconsistency costs. You know what genuine effort should look like because you experienced what happens when effort becomes one-sided. And now, if your soulmate ever comes closer again, they will be meeting a version of you that listens to actions more carefully than promises. Stay till the end, because this is not where your story becomes smaller, it is where your standards become clearer. Your soulmate can regret everything, they can finally understand everything, and they can wish they had recognized everything sooner. But the next chapter depends on something far more important than regret. Whether their understanding becomes real change. And that is the revelation waiting on the other side of your distance. You never became distant because you stopped believing in love. You became distant because you finally started believing that the right love should never require you to lose yourself just to keep it.